The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as High Counselor Vexthan raised his four arms. His blue skin glowed softly under the artificial lights, and his large black eyes swept across the assembled delegates. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated seats, each one waiting for the emergency session to begin. "We are here today," Vexthan said, his voice deep and serious, "to discuss the human problem." A wave of nervous whispers spread through the chamber. The Krillix delegate, a creature made of living crystal, made a sound like breaking glass. The Morathi ambassador, who looked like a giant slug with tentacles, shifted uncomfortably in his moisture pod. "3 standard cycles ago," Vexthan continued, "we voted to teach the humans a lesson. They were expanding too fast. They were trading without proper permits. They were settling worlds outside their designated zone. We agreed that they needed to be put in their place." The High Counselor paused and looked down at his notes. His translator device beeped softly as it converted his words into the hundreds of languages spoken by the council members. "We sent the Vorgan Dominion to handle the matter. 60 warships, the finest fleet in the sector. We expected them to blockade the human colonies and force compliance with our demands." Ambassador Grix of the Vorgan Dominion lowered his reptilian head in shame. His scales, normally bright green, had turned a sickly gray color. The once proud warrior looked like a shadow of himself. "Instead," Vexthan said, "every single ship was destroyed. The humans did not just defend themselves, they counterattacked. In the past 3 cycles, they have taken 14 Vorgan worlds. They have captured the mining stations in the Nebula Belt, and yesterday they destroyed our observation post at Station Theta 7. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted, screamed, and made various sounds of alarm in their native languages. The Plix representative, a cloud of sentient gas contained in a glass sphere, turned an angry shade of red. "Order, order," Vexthan shouted, slamming his ceremonial staff against the floor. "We must discuss this calmly. We must understand what went wrong." A small voice came from the back of the chamber. "I tried to warn you." Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was Zara 5, the AI representative from the Machine Collective. She was displayed as a hologram, her form shifting between different geometric shapes as she spoke. "When this council voted to take action against humanity, I was the only one who voted against it. I have studied humans extensively. They are not like other species. They are something else entirely." High Counselor Vexthan frowned. "Please explain what you mean." Zara 5 floated forward, her holographic form moving through the air. "Most species in this galaxy evolved as prey animals. They learned to hide, to run, to avoid conflict. Even the Vorgan, who are fearsome warriors, evolved from creatures that hunted in packs for safety. Their instinct when facing a stronger enemy is to retreat and find another way." She paused, and her form shifted into what looked like a small human figure. "Humans are different. They evolved on a death world." "Death world?" asked the Morathi ambassador. "What is this term?" "Earth," Zara 5 explained. "The human home world. It has extreme temperature variations, violent weather patterns, dangerous predators, toxic plants, diseases that constantly evolve to kill them, and natural disasters that can wipe out entire populations. By galactic standards, it should be uninhabitable. No sane species would choose to evolve there." The delegates murmured among themselves. Most species in the galaxy came from stable, peaceful worlds where evolution moved slowly and peacefully. The idea of a world actively trying to kill its inhabitants was disturbing. "But the humans did not just survive on Earth," Zara 5 continued. "They thrived. They became the top predator on a world full of deadly creatures. They learned to use tools, to make weapons, to work together in groups. And most importantly, they developed a trait that is very rare in the galaxy." "What trait?" Vexthan asked, leaning forward. "They became persistent hunters." The chamber fell silent. The term did not translate well into most languages. Several delegates looked confused. On Earth, Zara 5 explained, humans would hunt animals that were faster and stronger than them. They could not catch these animals in a short chase, so instead they would follow them for hours, for days. They would track their prey without rest, without stopping, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. The humans would walk and walk and walk until their prey simply gave up and died. The Krillix delegate made another breaking sound, this time softer: fear. This trait is built into their very nature, Zara 5 said. When you attack a human, they do not think about retreat. They do not think about compromise. They think about one thing only: hunting you down until you cannot run anymore. They will follow you across the galaxy if they have to. Ambassador Grix of the Vorgan Dominion finally spoke. His voice was rough and tired, broken by weeks of defeat and shame. This is true. When we attacked their colony on New Haven, we expected them to surrender. We had overwhelming force. We had better weapons. We had more ships. By all logic, they should have given up. He paused, his claws gripping the table. Instead, they fought, every single one of them. The children hid bombs in their toys. The elderly flew ships into our cruisers. When we tried to retreat, they followed us. They tracked our fleet for 6 days through the Vorin Passage. They did not stop to rest. They did not stop to repair their ships. They just kept coming. He shuddered, which was a strange sight for a 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior. By the time we reached Vorgan Prime, we had no ships left. They destroyed them one by one, picking off the weak and damaged vessels first, just like predators culling a herd. And when our last ship tried to surrender, do you know what they said? The chamber waited in silence. They said, "You started this, we finish it." High Counselor Vexthan sat back in his chair. For the first time in his long career, he looked truly afraid. What are they doing now? What is the current situation? Zara 5 hologram flickered. They are building. They have converted their entire economy to war production. Every factory, every shipyard, every research station is working at full capacity. They are producing ships faster than we can count them. Their population has mobilized completely. How many ships do they have now? Zara 5 paused before answering. Our last estimate was 12,000, but that was yesterday. Today it will be more. Perhaps 13,000, perhaps 14. The Morathi ambassador made a wet, gurgling sound of horror. The entire council fleet is only 8,000 ships. They already outnumber us. Yes, Zara 5 said, and the humans are not just building. They are recruiting. The colony worlds that were dissatisfied with council rule are joining them. The species that we have oppressed for centuries are offering their support. The humans are promising them freedom, equality, and a voice in a new government. They are building an alliance that grows stronger every day. Vexthan stood up slowly. We must stop them. We must attack now before they get stronger. We must strike at their heart. That would be a mistake, Zara 5 said calmly. Every attack only makes them more determined. Every loss only makes them angrier. The Vorgan attacked them 3 cycles ago. Today, the Vorgan Dominion is fighting for its survival. If the full council attacks, the humans will not rest until the council itself is destroyed. Then what do we do? Vexthan asked, his voice almost pleading. Zara 5 hologram shifted again, becoming a simple glowing sphere. There is only one thing you can do. Something that no species in this galaxy has ever done to another. Something that goes against everything the council has stood for. What is it? You must apologize. You must admit that the attack was wrong. You must offer peace, not from a position of strength, but from a position of humility. And you must pray that the humans are willing to accept it. The chamber fell into shocked silence. No species in the history of the Galactic Council had ever apologized to another. It was considered the ultimate sign of weakness. It was unthinkable. But as the delegates looked at each other, they began to realize that weakness might be their only hope for survival. High Counselor Vexthan took a deep breath. "Contact the human leadership. Tell them we want to talk." 3 days passed before the humans agreed to a meeting. The council had expected negotiations over location, security arrangements, and diplomatic protocols. Instead, the human response was simple and direct. "We will meet you at Station Theta 7, the station you destroyed. Bring whoever you want. We will be there." The council sent a delegation of 20 representatives, including High Counselor Vexthan himself. They traveled in an unarmed diplomatic vessel, as was traditional. When they arrived at the coordinates of Station Theta 7, they found only debris floating in space. Twisted metal and shattered glass spun slowly in the void. But the debris was not alone. Surrounding it were human ships, hundreds of them, thousands of them. They formed a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across the entire viewing screen. "By the ancient stars," whispered the Krillix delegate, "they could destroy us with a thought." A voice came through the communication system. It was calm and clear, speaking perfect standard Galactic. "Council delegation, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Human Fleet. You may dock with the Remembrance. Follow the beacon signal." A single light blinked among the endless sea of ships, guiding them to a massive vessel at the center of the formation. The Remembrance was enormous, easily 10 times the size of any council ship. It was covered in weapons, and its hull was painted with a single word in the human language: "Remember." The diplomatic vessel landed in a docking bay that was larger than most space stations. Human soldiers stood in perfect rows, their faces hidden behind dark helmets. They did not speak or move as the council delegates walked past them. The silence was terrifying. Vexthan had seen many warriors in his life. The Vorgan were fierce. The Krillix were hard as stone. The Insectogen were fearless in battle. But these humans were different. They radiated something that Vexthan had never felt before. It was not anger, not hatred, not even aggression. It was purpose. Pure, focused, unshakable purpose. They were guided to a large meeting room with a simple table and chairs. At the head of the table sat a human woman with gray hair and cold eyes. She wore a plain uniform with no decorations except for a small pin on her chest. Vexthan's translator identified it as a symbol from human history, something called a phoenix, a bird that rose from its own ashes. "I am Admiral Chen," the woman said. "I speak for humanity. Sit." It was not a request. The council delegates quickly took their seats. Admiral Chen looked at each of them in turn. Her gaze was steady and unblinking, like a predator examining its prey. "3 of your months ago, you sent 60 warships to attack our colony on New Haven. 7,000 civilians died in the first bombardment, including my grandson." Vexthan opened his mouth to speak, but Admiral Chen held up her hand. "I am not finished. After the attack, your council released a statement saying that the humans needed to learn their place in the galaxy, that we were too aggressive, too ambitious, that we needed to be controlled." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You were right about one thing. We are aggressive. We are ambitious. But you made a mistake when you thought we could be controlled." She pressed a button on the table, and a holographic display appeared above them. It showed a map of the galaxy, with council territories marked in blue and human territories marked in red. As they watched, the red zones expanded, pushing into the blue. "In 3 months, we have taken more territory than the council has gained in 300 years. We have freed 42 worlds from council oppression. We have built a fleet larger than anything this galaxy has ever seen. And we are just getting started." The Morathi ambassador raised a tentacle. "Please, Admiral, we came to discuss peace." Admiral Chen turned her cold eyes to the slug-like creature. "Peace? You come to us with peace now. Where was your peace when Vorgan ships were bombing hospitals on New Haven? Where was your peace when council soldiers were rounding up human colonists and putting them in camps? Where was your peace when your High Counselor called us animals that needed to be put down?" The room fell silent. No one could meet her gaze. "You do not want peace," Admiral Chen said. "You want us to stop. You want us to go back to our designated zone and be quiet little creatures while you continue to rule the galaxy. That is not peace. That is surrender." High Counselor Vexthan finally found his voice. "Then what do you want, Admiral?" Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair. For a moment, she looked tired, old, human. "I want justice. I want the Council to admit what it did. I want the individuals responsible for ordering the attack to face trial. I want the families of the 7,000 dead to receive compensation. And I want the Council to recognize humanity as an equal member of the galactic community, with all the rights and privileges that entails." "That is impossible," said the Plix representative, its gaseous form swirling angrily. "The Council has never recognized a new species as equal. There are procedures, tests, centuries of evaluation." "Then change the procedures," Admiral Chen said simply, "or we will change them for you." The threat hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Delegates shouted at each other across the floor. Security drones flew overhead, trying to maintain order. The noise was so loud that the translation systems could barely keep up. High Counselor Vexthan stood at his podium, waiting for the storm to pass. He had expected this reaction when he delivered Admiral Chen's terms. He had not expected it to be quite so violent. Delegates who had been allies for centuries were now screaming at each other. "This is surrender," screamed Ambassador Grix of the Vorgan Dominion. His scales had turned bright red with fury. "You want us to bow to these animals, to admit we were wrong. The Vorgan have never apologized for anything in 10,000 years of history." "And look where that pride has gotten you," Vexthan replied calmly. "The humans have taken 14 of your worlds. Your fleet is destroyed. Your economy is in ruins. Perhaps it is time to try something different." Grix snarled but said nothing. The truth of Vexthan's words was too painful to argue with. The mighty Vorgan Dominion had been brought to its knees by creatures they had once called prey. "The humans are not asking us to surrender," Vexthan continued. "They are asking for recognition, for justice, for a place at the table. These are not unreasonable demands." "They are demands from a position of strength," said the Morathi ambassador. "Today they ask for recognition. Tomorrow they will ask for control. We cannot trust them. This is how empires are born." "Can we afford not to?" asked Zara 5, her holographic form flickering into view. "I have been monitoring human activity since the meeting. Their production has not slowed. Their fleet continues to grow. If we refuse their terms, they will attack. And they will win." Acrylic's delegate made a sound like cracking ice. "Then we must attack first, strike at their home world, destroy Earth and the humans will fall apart, cut off the head and the body dies." Vexthan shook his head slowly. "That was considered. Our military advisors ran the simulations. To reach Earth, we would have to pass through 17 human-controlled systems. Our fleet would be destroyed long before we got there, and even if we somehow succeeded, it would not stop them." "Why not?" asked the Plix representative. "Because humans do not live only on Earth anymore. They have colonies on hundreds of worlds, millions of ships, billions of people spread across the galaxy. Destroying Earth would not end humanity. It would only make them angrier. They would hunt us for 1,000 years." The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Every option seemed to lead to defeat. Every path led to destruction. A new voice spoke up from the back of the chamber. It was Ambassador Thalix of the Meridian Collective, a species of peaceful telepaths who rarely participated in council debates. "Perhaps we are thinking about this wrong." Everyone turned to look at the small, gray-skinned creature. Thalix's large eyes blinked slowly as she considered her words carefully. "We keep asking how to defeat the humans, how to stop them, how to control them, but those are the wrong questions. The right question is, why do they fight?" "Because we attacked them," Grix said bitterly. Yes, but that is not the whole truth, Thalix replied. I have studied human minds. They are difficult to read, full of strange emotions and contradictions. But there is one thing that burns brighter than everything else in them. Do you know what it is? No one answered. Fairness, Thalix said. Humans have an obsession with fairness. They cannot stand injustice. When they see something wrong, they must fix it. When they are treated unfairly, they must fight back. It is built into their very nature. It is part of who they are. So what? Asked the Marathi ambassador. Many species value fairness. Not like humans do, Thalix said. For most species, fairness is an abstract concept, something nice to have when convenient. For humans, it is a burning need. They will sacrifice everything for it. They will die for it. And more importantly, they will fight for it even when they cannot win. Thalix paused, letting her words sink in. The Council attacked humanity because we thought they were getting too powerful. We wanted to keep them in their place. But from the human perspective, we attacked them simply because we could. Because they were weaker than us. Because we wanted to maintain our own power. To them, that was the greatest injustice imaginable. What are you suggesting? Vex then asked. I am suggesting that if we want peace with humans, we must give them fairness. Not because we are afraid of them, but because it is the right thing to do. We must acknowledge their grievances. We must admit our mistakes. We must treat them as equals, not because they have forced us to, but because that is how they should always have been treated. The chamber erupted in protest again. The idea of admitting wrongdoing was foreign to most council species. It was seen as weakness, as surrender, as shame. But Vexthan was thinking. He remembered Admiral Chen's face during the meeting, the cold anger in her eyes, but also the weariness. The human leader was not a monster seeking conquest. She was a grandmother who had lost her grandchild. She was fighting for justice, not power. We will vote, Vexthan announced, raising his arms for silence. The motion before us is simple. Do we accept the human terms for peace, or do we prepare for war? One by one, the delegates cast their votes. The process took hours, as each species debated internally before making their decision. The tension in the chamber was unbearable. Old alliances were tested. New enemies were made. Finally, the results were tallied. Vex then looked at the numbers and felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. The motion passes, he announced. By a margin of 31 to 16, the Galactic Council agrees to negotiate peace with humanity. Ambassador Grix roared in fury and stormed out of the chamber. Several other delegates followed him, their species' pride too great to accept defeat. But the majority remained, their faces showing the exhausted acceptance of beings who had faced an impossible choice and chosen survival. Vex then transmitted the Council's decision to the human fleet. The response came quickly. We accept your offer to negotiate. Send your delegation to the Remembrance in 2 days. Come prepared to make real commitments. No more games. In those 2 days, Vex then worked harder than he had ever worked in his life. He gathered documents, testimony, and evidence. He interviewed survivors from the New Haven attack. He listened to the stories of humans who had lost everything in the Council's aggression. By the end, he felt sick with shame. He learned about a human teacher who had shielded her students with her own body when the bombs fell. He heard about a doctor who had worked for 3 days without sleep trying to save lives. He saw images of children playing in parks just hours before those parks became craters. When the Council delegation returned to the Remembrance, they were different. Gone was the arrogance, the assumption of superiority. In its place was something new: humility, respect, a willingness to listen. Admiral Chen noticed the change immediately. She greeted them with the same cold professionalism as before, but there was a slight softening in her eyes. You've been doing your homework, she observed. Yes, Vexton replied. I have learned things I wish I had known before, things I should have known before. The negotiations began. They lasted for 18 days. The discussions were long, difficult, and often painful. The Council had to confront centuries of policies that had kept other species down. The humans had to confront their own anger and desire for revenge. There were moments when everything almost fell apart. A council delegate said something insensitive. A human officer lost his temper. Old wounds were reopened, old insults remembered. But each time, both sides pulled back from the edge. Each time, they found a way to continue. But slowly, painfully, an agreement took shape. The individuals who ordered the New Haven attack would face trial. The families of the victims would receive compensation. Humanity would be recognized as a full member of the Galactic Council, with voting rights and representation. And most importantly, the Council would reform its policies to treat all species equally, regardless of their technological level or military power. On the final day, as the agreement was being signed, Admiral Chen pulled Vexthan aside. "I want to show you something," she said quietly. She led him to a small room off the main corridor. Inside was a simple memorial with 7,000 names carved into the walls. Each name was lit by a tiny light. At the center was a holographic display showing a young boy, maybe 8 years old by human standards, smiling at the camera. "My grandson," Admiral Chen said. Her voice was steady, but Vexthan could see the pain behind her eyes. His name was Marcus. He wanted to be a pilot when he grew up. He used to make little ships out of paper and fly them around the house. He would laugh and say he was exploring the galaxy. Vexthan did not know what to say. Apologies seemed inadequate. "I could have destroyed you," Admiral Chen continued. "I could have burned your worlds and conquered your territories. The fleet wanted me to. The people wanted me to. For a while I wanted to. Why didn't you?" Admiral Chen looked at the holographic image of her grandson. "Because Marcus would have been disappointed in me. He was a good boy, kind, forgiving. He would have wanted peace, not revenge." She turned to face Vexthan directly. "I am giving your council one chance to prove that you can change, that you can be fair, that you can treat others the way you want to be treated. If you fail, if you go back to your old ways, we will finish what we started. But I am hoping for all our sakes that you will not fail." Vexthan nodded slowly. "I understand, and I promise you, Admiral, I will do everything in my power to make sure we do not fail." Admiral Chen studied him for a long moment. Then, for the first time, she smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad but genuine. "Then perhaps there is hope for us all." 5 years had passed since the Treaty of Remembrance. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Vexthan stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Unity Station, looking out at the stars. The station was built in neutral space, halfway between Council territory and human space. It was a symbol of the new era, a place where all species could meet as equals. Around him, delegates from dozens of worlds walked through the corridors. Humans mingled freely with Vorgan, Krillix, and Morathi. Young beings of different species studied together in the academy halls. Trade ships from every corner of the galaxy docked at the station's ports. It was not perfect. Old prejudices died hard. There were still conflicts, still disputes, still moments when the fragile peace seemed ready to break. Just last month, a Vorgan extremist group had tried to assassinate a human diplomat. The situation had been tense for days. But the peace held. Somehow, improbably, it held. "Lost in thought, old friend." Vexthan turned to find Admiral Chen standing beside him. She had retired from the military 2 years ago, but she still came to the station regularly as a diplomat and advisor. Her hair was whiter now, and she walked with a slight limp from an old injury, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Just remembering," Vexthan said. 5 years ago I thought the galaxy was ending. Now look at it." Chen nodded, following his gaze out the window. "It's something, isn't it? When I was a girl, humans had barely left Earth. We thought we were alone in the universe. And now?" Now you have changed everything, Vexthan finished. Chen laughed softly. We had help, you for one. If you had not convinced the council to accept our terms, none of this would have happened. I did not have much choice. You would have destroyed us. Maybe, maybe not. Chen turned to face him. Can I tell you a secret, one I've never told anyone? Vexthan nodded. During those negotiations, when the council was deciding whether to accept our terms, we were terrified. Our fleet was impressive, yes, but we had stretched ourselves thin. Our economy was struggling. Our people were tired. If the council had called our bluff and attacked with everything they had, we might have won eventually, but the cost would have been enormous. Vexthan stared at her in surprise. You were bluffing. Not exactly. We would have fought, we always fight. But we were hoping, praying really that you would choose peace, that all those ships and all that anger would be enough to convince you to talk instead of fight. Chen smiled. It worked. I never knew. That's the thing about humans, Chen said. We're not as strong as we pretend to be. We're not as fierce or as fearless. We just never let anyone see our weakness. We learned that lesson on Earth, back when there were things bigger and stronger than us everywhere we looked. Show weakness and you die. Show strength, even if it's a lie, and you might survive. Vexthan thought about this for a long moment. It changed everything he thought he understood about humanity. They were not invincible warriors. They were survivors, just as he had always believed, but their survival came not from strength alone, but from the ability to appear strong when they were weak. You are very strange creatures, he said finally. Yes, Chen agreed. We are, but so is everyone else in their own way. That's what I've learned from all this. Every species in this galaxy has their own strengths and weaknesses, their own fears and hopes. The council made a mistake in thinking that some species were better than others. We're all just trying to survive. A young human ran up to them, out of breath. Vexthan recognized him as one of the academy students, a boy named Marcus, named after Chen's lost grandson. He had become like family to the old admiral. Admiral Chen, the Meridian delegation is asking for you. They say it's urgent. Chen sighed and turned to go. Duty calls. We'll talk more later, Vexthan. She walked away, the young boy chattering excitedly beside her. Vexthan watched them go, a strange warmth spreading through his chest. 5 years ago, that scene would have been impossible. A human and a Meridian working together. An old warrior and a young student. Enemies becoming friends. He turned back to the stars and thought about the future. There would be challenges ahead. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of unknown threats and old grudges. But for the first time in his long life, Vexthan felt hope. The humans had taught the council a valuable lesson, not through conquest or destruction, but through determination and the refusal to accept injustice. They had shown that even the smallest species could stand up to the mightiest empires. They had proven that fairness was not weakness, but strength. And they had reminded the galaxy of a simple truth that it had forgotten long ago, that every being deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of where they came from or how powerful they were. Later that day, Vexthan attended a ceremony in the station's main hall. It was the 5-year anniversary of the treaty, and representatives from every species had gathered to celebrate. Speeches were made, promises were renewed, old enemies shook hands and shared drinks. But the moment that stuck with Vexthan came at the end, when a group of children from different species performed a song together. Human children stood next to Vorgan children, Krillix children next to Morathi children. They sang in standard Galactic, their voices blending together in a simple melody about friendship and hope. One of the human children, a little girl with bright red hair, held hands with a young Vorgan who looked uncomfortable but did not pull away. Behind them, their parents watched with tears in their eyes. That was the moment Vexthan knew the galaxy had truly changed. Not because of treaties or ships or threats, but because of children holding hands. Because the next generation was learning something that the old one had forgotten, That different did not mean enemy. That strange did not mean dangerous. That the galaxy was big enough for everyone. The story was told for generations afterward. In council archives and human schools, in alien nurseries and space station cantinas. The story of how a small, aggressive, impossible species from a death world had stood up to the mightiest empire in the galaxy and refused to back down. But it was not a story about war. It was not a story about victory or defeat. It was a story about change, about the moment when the galaxy looked in the mirror and did not like what it saw, about the courage it took to admit mistakes and the strength required to do better. And at the heart of the story was a simple truth that echoed through the ages, that the universe was vast and strange and full of wonders, and that every being in it, no matter how small or weak or different, had the right to be treated with dignity. The humans had fought for that truth. They had bled for it and died for it. And in the end, they had won something far more precious than territory or power. They had won the future. Vexthan lived for another 50 years after the treaty was signed. He spent those years working to make sure its promises were kept. He helped write new laws, trained new diplomats, and mentored young leaders from every species. When he finally passed away, surrounded by friends both human and alien, his last words were, "It was worth it." Admiral Chen died 3 years before him, peacefully in her sleep. The entire galaxy mourned her. A new station was built and named in her honor. At its center stood a statue of her holding hands with a human child and a Vorgan child, the symbol of the new era she had helped create. And the galaxy continued to grow and change and learn. New species were discovered. New alliances were formed. New challenges arose and were met. Through it all, the lessons of the Human Council War were not forgotten. The humans themselves continued to be complicated. They built great things and made terrible mistakes. They loved fiercely and fought bitterly. They were kind one moment and cruel the next. They were everything the galaxy had learned about them and more. But they were part of the family now, and the galaxy, for all its faults, had learned to love them. Because in the end, that was what the humans had really shown them. Not how to fight, not how to conquer, but how to be better, how to admit when you were wrong, how to stand up for what was right, how to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. These were human lessons, born from human struggles, forged in human blood. But they belonged to everyone now. They belonged to the Vorgan, rebuilding their worlds with human aid. They belonged to the Meridian, their telepathic gifts now used to build bridges instead of walls. They belonged to the Krillix and the Morathi and the Plix and all the others who had once thought themselves superior. The galaxy had discovered why provoking humanity was a disaster. But more importantly, it had discovered why humanity was a gift. And as the centuries passed and the stars continued their eternal dance, the beings of the galaxy looked to the future with hope. Not because their problems were solved or their conflicts were ended, but because they knew now that they could face whatever came together. Human and alien, strong and weak, different and same. Together, and that made all the difference.